Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We are tackling creating and modifying surfaces in terrain tools. I'm Erin, I'm your resident webinar host here at Softtree, and today I've got with me David Mills, one of our support engineers. In terms of content, I'm going to keep this intro pretty short. Let's just talk a little bit about what you're going to see in this webinar. So we are going to be using a Weir example to demonstrate a bunch of functionality that's in the terrain module, or as if you have just the standalone version, we call that just Terrain Tools 3D. So we're going to talk about creating new features, buffering, how to do some grading operations, how to merge terrains, and then how to add terrains as reference actually in your background. So that's just a quick overview of what you're going to see in today's webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please type them into that comment section of your GoToWebinar panel. As well, if you're watching this in the future off of YouTube, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below and we're happy to answer it. And with that, I'm just going to pass it over to David.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, so the terrain module, let's first of all get some data. If you want to build a surface, you need XYZ coordinates. So the first thing I'm going to open here is a simple ASCII file. This file was generated from a total station. And what does that look like? Well, actually, if I open that file in a text editor, it looks like this. So it's just XYZ coordinates. And just to be confusing, it's actually Y, X, Z in that order. And we can read those data. It's easy. All you need to do is set up an import format, and you have to tell the software using the import options which column contains which coordinates. So again, you can't make a surface without X, Y, and Z coordinates, and this is one of the ways you can import the data. You can also tag your point codes because this file actually contains point codes as well as XYZ coordinates. Okay, so let's just read that data in. There it is. And every point has a well-defined position, X, Y, and elevation, Z. And because those points are, first of all, defined as XYZ coordinates and tagged as modeled in the properties panel, we can make a surface. So I'll just generate a surface here, and there it is. We got contours all at once, and we can see that that's a nice three-dimensional surface. Just to cover those details a little more carefully, when you generate a surface, you have the option of choosing your contour intervals or skipping contours altogether if you want. There's some thinning smoothing options for the contours, and this item here is kind of important. It defines how long the biggest triangle will be. And I'm going to illustrate that in a completely different data set. I'm going to open up a lidar data set. So this is fairly typical ASCII data. Oh, one more thing before we leave the ASCII data, you don't have to do it all in one file. You can bring in data from multiple files into the same document. So if I do a file insert, you can see here it's possible to bring in the second file using the same import format. At least I will be if I do this. There's the same import format. And I'm going to bring in file number 2, and it just gives me the same options, reads the file in the same way, and adds this extra survey data on the edge here. In fact, I could bring in data from any source. It doesn't have to be total station data. We could bring in data from any one of the various formats that we support. Different flavors of ASCII. We can read DEM, that's a grid format. We can read lidar, and I'm going to show you that in a second. You can even sometimes get decent data from DWG, although it's usually used for drawings. Okay, so you can bring in data from multiple files. You have to be a bit careful about coordinate systems because the data has to show up in the same place on your screen. So matching coordinate systems, or at least transforming coordinate systems, is a requirement. Okay, let's take a look at a lidar data file. I've got a few of them on my computer, and I happen to like this one here. So there's two tiles here. I could bring them both in. I'm just going to bring in the one. So lidar options are a little bit simpler than ASCII options. Basically, you can choose what kind of point type you want to bring in, assuming the data has been classified. You can click here if you're not sure. And then you can also thin the data out because sometimes lidar has a lot of data, and it's nice to bring it in a decimated form. You can also put in regions, and you can thin your data by region. And here's my projection. You can see this is in our local BC Alberta's projection. Okay, so let's just bring in that data. Now the file contains a lot of points, but we're only reading just under 1 million. Just over 1 million. Here we are, 1.4 million down in the toolbar showing me how many I have. And now I'm going to create a surface from that. So this time I'm going to play around with the maximum side length. LiDAR data is pretty dense. You expect points every meter or so. I'm going to say that I don't want to connect points that are further than 10 meters apart. That's what the maximum side length does. And we'll build these contours. I'm just going to take the defaults. So large data set doesn't take that long, really. It's already finished creating the surface. Now it's generating the contours. And an important point about contours, they really are just throwaway features in our software. The contour is, it has an elevation defined, but it doesn't define the elevation. The elevation is defined by the underlying lidar points and the triangles. So what do those triangles look like? Well, first let's look at this in 3D. And as you can see, there are holes in the model. And I don't see them in the plan window. Well, that's because I don't have any way of looking at the surface yet. Let's just turn on the boundary for triangles. Okay, and there's my holes. So this spot here is this spot here. If I zoom in on that and then display all the points, Control A, you can see that there are some holes in the data. And these gaps are roughly 10 meters plus across. So that was a quick illustration of why you might want to set your maximum side length to something other than include all. And in the next model, which we're going to use to display some more features in our software, I'm going to look at a quarry. So let's open up my quarry. Where is it? There it is. Now in this case, I used a slightly different way of limiting where the triangles were created. If when I do this generate here, it remembers the settings from the last time, and it shows include all. And yet I'm not getting contours or triangles or anything out in this area here, even though there's a data point there. And that's because the feature that's selected is called a tin boundary. The property in the properties panel is set to tin boundary, and so there are no features there are no triangles generated outside. Now there aren't too many points in this model. We're looking at around 26,000, including all the contours. So it wouldn't hurt to display the triangle set just to illustrate what that looks like. So in the plan options surface, I can display triangles, and you can see how that works. And I've got a hole over here which has quite a large gap in the data. So if I had limited triangles to be, you know, 10 meters or 5 meters or something, this would be a hole in the model. But if I just put a boundary around the whole thing and call it a tin boundary, then I can effectively omit all the bad data outside the model that I might see otherwise. Now this model is pretty much ready for our next step, but I wanted to illustrate how you can extend a model. Often a customer comes to us and says, my model's too small, I can't go out in the field and resurvey, how do I make it a little bit bigger? Well, probably the simplest way is just to extend a contour, and the contours, as I mentioned, are not actually part of the model. So here's how you do that. First of all, you just create a feature. So I'm going to create a new feature. I'm going to call it extra for extrapolated, and it will be a modeled elevation feature. Those two properties make it part of the surface, and I'll draw it with the mouse. Now it needs an elevation because it has an elevation defined, but I'm going to use the snapping function here to pick up the elevation of this contour. So I just snapped onto the contour and the elevation is 1238. Now I'm going to pick up that new point and move it over here. And I'm guessing that contour kind of looks like this. Let's put in a few points. That feature doesn't need to be connected. And you might want to see a symbol to illustrate that it's a dummy feature. So I'm just going to put that. And the trick is to create a new feature, and all I did was to use the snapping function. Let's do one more. Okay, so this feature here, that's my elevation, that's my extrapolated feature, 1238 contour, and if I wanted to create that again, I could simply create a new feature and make sure that it has elevations turned on so that it becomes part of the surface. Draw it with the mouse, ignore this elevation, and instead snap it onto a contour so it picks up the contour elevation. Then draw your points wherever you think they should be. This is made up data. Now I've already moved my boundary feature so that it includes the new data points, and so if I recalculate my surface, it will now include that section. And you can see that the generated contours are actually following the points that I created. Okay, enough. Let's save that. I'll just put a number 3 on the end and go on to the next part of our topic is creating new features. I've kind of showed you that again, and we're going to already, and I'm going to show it to you again. We're going to create a feature to build a weir on this model that will hold back the water here and create a water storage. Now, we're going to use the grading tool to do this, and for grading operations, you always start with a new empty terrain. And the important thing is to know where the heck you are. So I'm going to put the model that we've just updated, Quarry 3, in the background of our terrain and zoom extent so we can see it. So there it is. And I want to make my weir in this area here. You can hover to get elevations. You can read the elevations off the contour. So there's 1238. And in between should be 1237.5. Okay, so I want to create a weir at elevation 1237.5, and I'm going to do that by creating a new feature. That's from the home ribbon, new feature. Give it a sensible name. weir or dam or something like that. And it has to have 3 dimensions, so its elevation is set, and it's going to be part of a model. This will be its own surface. We've got a surface already in the background. We're going to have 2 surfaces in a minute, and I'm going to draw it with the mouse. This time it is important, the elevation here. And now I can draw my feature. So there's 1238. So that's probably a good place to start. Click there to create a point, click here to create another point, and then so on. So in terrain, it's a 2-click process to add a point to a feature. Click once to create a point, click a second time to anchor it down. And let's just, I'm purposely going into the road a little bit here because we're going to fix that after. Right, so now I've got the shape of my Weir top, but it's just a line, and I'd kind of like it to be wider. So that's where we use the buffer feature. I'm just going to add a meter on both sides of this line. And notice it's still got the same elevation, 1237.5. And there's actually 2 features I just created, so I'm going to use the join function to make them into one feature. And then I don't need this anymore. I don't need the middle. So there's my Weir top. It has elevation 1237.5 all along. And I'm going to now make the rest of my Weir, which will look like a dam. I'm going to grade down to the original ground. So we do that in the terrain modeling grade standard option, and I happen to know that it's left, but it's often a good idea to just click this little button here a few times to see which way your polygon is going. In this case, it's clockwise, so I want to grade out to the left. I want to grade outwards. Okay, so outwards is left, file is the one in the background. I have to choose a slope. I have to add extra points. I'm going to put them every 2 meters. And everything over here gets clicked. We're going to generate a surface, but we don't need contours. And we do need all possible triangles. And we need a boundary on the outside. This will be sort of clear after I click the button here, and you'll see what it does. Okay, first of all, there's our fill volume. That's how much dirt we need, 685 cubic meters. And we also have some cutting going on, which is kind of useless. We don't need to cut to make a dam unless we want to quarry some material. Okay, so we've got a volume and we've got a shape, and these slope lines are 2 meters apart. That's what the 2 meters was about. And this feature here is my tin boundary, and you can see it's tagged as tin boundary, so my surface doesn't go outside of it. And you can tell all that if you look in the 3D window. There it is. And you can also tell that there's some cutting going on, and we've actually eaten a little piece of our roadway here. So how do I fix that? Well, I think the best way to do it, calculate volumes, and this time turn on calculate features. These are surface intersection features. So this will intersect the quarry 3 is my original ground. The current surface is the Weir, and wherever they intersect, I'm going to get a little green feature. So there's my same volumes again, and now I got these features where it crosses over. So that's great. So now what I can do is I can use that feature to break this feature. And have I got them selected right? No, I need to, there we go. So the intersected feature is selected, and I can use this operation here to break at. So this is a little tricky because you have to set up the current feature to be the one that you want to cut with, and all the other selected features will get broken. There we go. So this feature is broken right there, and it's broken right there. And I'm just going to continue it along and snap it on to, there we go. So I've done one end. Let's do the other end. I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. Selecting this feature as a braking feature, and then that one requires shift clicking and so on. Here's a totally different way to do it. Just select the one you want to brake, insert a point, click to create a new point, click to snap it on the intersecting feature, and then brake at current point or Control Q. Great, so that's broken over there. Do the same on the other side. Select this feature, create a new point here, snap it onto the intersecting feature, and brake at current point. Now, this feature here is one side of my Weir top, and shift click here, I've selected two. So you see it broke it into two pieces when I did that. So I need to rejoin it. And now I'll close the end again, do the same trick, and I don't need to actually make that last. I can just push the close button. Okay, that was a little bit of fiddling, but now I have a very accurate feature that actually stops when it hits the ground, when it intersects with the ground. And I don't need any of these other features anymore. So let's just invert selection and delete them. This is the only feature I need to do my grading. And now I can just regrade it. It remembered my settings, and now there's no volume cut. It's only fill. Great, I've made a surface, and it looks pretty good. Now I have two surfaces. Why can't I see the surface for the background? Well, that's part of the 3D options. So here's my current surface, and here's my background surface. If I want to display it, I need to turn on triangles like so. And in the foreground surface, I'm not sure I need to see all those lines, so I'm going to turn off features, but leave the triangles. Okay, so there's my 3D display. Oops, why is it still displaying the lines? Well, that's, in our software, anything that's selected is always displayed. So if I deselect them, they disappear. There we go. Okay, well, we promised to show you merging terrains. What does the surface look like when I build the Weir, when I'm finished with it? So I'm going to save this. This really, the background is just a background. This stuff here that is part of the new earthwork is really the only thing that's in this model. The rest is external. But I should save it. And I'm going to call it dam. I've already got one in there. I'll just save over the top of it. Now, let's reopen the original ground. Haven't done anything to this. It still looks the same as it did before. I want to merge in the new dam. Before I do that, I'm going to do save as, because I really don't want to mess up my original ground surface. So I'm going to save it as quarry plus dam. Again, I already got one in there, but this is a nice naming convention. It just reminds me that it started out as quarry and then I added the dam to it. Let's do the merge operation. Merge is very simple. All you have to do is find the file you want to merge, and the file you want to merge has to be smaller than the one you're merging it into, physically smaller. Okay. So there it is. It's in there. The surface needs to be updated. So let's do that. And there's my combined surface with contours. Now this contour here, 1237, there's the water level, and it would be nice to see that as a surface. Easy to do. I just select that contour, copy it to the clipboard, Control-C works, and then make a new surface. Now, do I need to save this? Yes, I do. Let's save this, and let's create a whole new terrain and paste that thing in there. There it is. Now, if I want to make a surface out of this, it has to have the modeled property turned on. And if I don't make it into a tin boundary, it's going to make a surface across the edge there. Let's just show that. So I don't need contours. There would only be one. I need to include all, and I say OK. And let me see, what did I do wrong here? Oh, I forgot to click apply. That's a fairly common mistake I make. I don't know, where'd my data go? Let's try that again. Okay, right. So I'm going to make this modeled, apply. Actually, it's a dumb name. Let's call it water. Apply. And this is going to be important, tin boundary. If I don't turn that on, when I generate a surface, it goes right across there. That's the whole point of limiting your triangle set. You want to avoid going outside of the contour in this case. So let's just turn that on and do it again. Don't forget to click apply, generate, and there we go. Okay, so that's my water surface. I'm going to save that, and we'll call it water 1237, which is the elevation. Now, if I go back to my dam, there it is. So we're still looking at the original ground here. We're not looking at the merged surface. We're looking at the dam, of course. And now let's add another background. You can do it in the 3D window. It's the same option you get in the plan window. I'm going to add the water in. Why do I have two? There's a good question. I think it's this one that I just created. What's the time on that? Yeah. Take the newest one. I might have the wrong one. We'll know in a sec. So display it. We don't need the features. We do need a color. And we want to see through it. Here's the transparency thing. This is fairly cryptic. You'd never know it was there unless you knew where to click. So plus button opens colors, alpha channels available for surfaces. Set it to something less than 255 and it will be transparent. And yep, I picked the wrong file, easily fixed. I'll just go back to my options and go into my backgrounds and remove that one. Oops, this one. And add back this one. And of course I have to set it up again. So I picked the wrong one again. I think you get the idea. I've got an example which we can look at very quickly because I've saved it in another folder. So let's just go there and get that. And now I think we're ready to field some questions. We are kind of tight for time today. We do need to quit at 11:45, but we got time for a couple of questions.
Awesome. Well, I'll take this moment just to remind everyone how to enter a question. So you do need to sort of expand that, go to webinar panel, and there's a little section there where you can type in your questions. As a reminder, we like to keep all of our question askers we don't announce your name, so we keep you anonymous. There's the word. Yeah, so you can type your questions in. I had a question, and actually this is one that Dave, perhaps you can talk a little bit about. I saw an image lately where we actually had a boat, like a three-dimensional boat sitting on some transparent water. I believe it was from a client of ours. Can you talk a little bit about how you would bring in that type of object?
Sure. Our client was using what's called an OBJ file. So you can import, where the heck is it? 3D Mesh, OBJ, there it is. And OBJ files are used for two purposes in our software. One is just to create things. We've got OBJ files that represent bridges, and our customer made some boats. That was very cool. And it's a series of facets. So when it gets read in, it comes in as facet features, 3D facet features. That's what this is. And it can be displayed in plan and profile and 3D, and it looks pretty cool. We also use OBJ files for the new 3D symbols, and yeah, not covered in this webinar, but there are 3D symbols that you can display in the 3D window, and they are created from OBJ files. So it's a way of storing a three-dimensional object. Next question.
Oh, I need to unmute to do it. Our next question, Dave, is there a maximum number of terrains you can put in the background?
There is, but I honestly don't know what the maximum is. I think it's around 10. You'd find out pretty quick. If you keep adding them, it'll eventually prevent you from doing that.
Very good. And another question here, just in terms of maximums. The next question is there a maximum number of lidar points that I'm able to import?
The number of lidar points over, if you bring in more than 10 million, you might be asking for trouble. So we generally say keep your surface data points to be under 10 million. That said, if you have a really powerful computer, you might be able to go higher than that. And as computers get faster and memory gets bigger and so on, you know, maybe that number will change. But 10 million is a reasonable number at this point. And that's for 64-bit software. You don't want to try, not many people would be using our 32-bit version, but yeah, 32-bit would be less.
Excellent. And we'll take maybe two more questions. So the next one here, what if you wanted to lower the water level in your example here by 1/2 meter?
Well, it's actually very easy to just lower the feature, and that would probably work fine because it would be underneath other features. The other way would be to create a new contour. Now I didn't create in my merged surface, I didn't create the contour that you wanted. So let's just do it. It's really easy. I just open, I'm going to actually run a new terrain. You can have more than one running at a time. And just open that water feature. So it's in my final folder, and there it is. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. I think Shift is simpler. They're all the same elevation. So you can see there's my 1237. So if I want to go down 1/2 meter, just type in 1236.5. That will move all points from where they were by 1/2 meter. And in this case, it lowers it down. So if you can see the features move, the surface hasn't. To get the surface to catch up with the feature, I do need to recalculate. There we go. Now, if I save that and just flip back here, it says, hey, one of your features just moved, or one of your backgrounds just changed. Do you want to update? Yes. And okay, it didn't update. That's funny. did I make a mistake? Oh, no, I did save it. Oh, let's recalculate, see what happens. Yeah, there we go. Now it's down below. I don't know why I had to recalculate. That's kind of, I might have been able to do this, update 3D display list. That might have fixed it too. Something was stored in a cache or a buffer somewhere. Anyway, you can see it's down a meter instead of half a meter. Next question, and that's probably all we can afford.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually might cut us off there, Dave. The next couple look a little bit more on the complicated side, so we will follow up with those folks after the fact. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking some time to, check out creating and modifying surfaces in Terrain Tools with us. We apologize for any of the audio issues you experienced. We're going to work to resolve those in time for our next webinar. And speaking of next webinars, we've just published a large list of upcoming webinars in our fall calendar onto our softry.com website. So be sure to check that out. So it's softry.com/webinars. And hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.